my student. Good morning. This is me, Dr.هاني الحسني, and that's the course of novel. Today we are trying to talk about a new topic. This topic is really fruitful, and why we need to talk about it, because we are starting a new chapter, a new novel. After we finish from 1984, we are here moving towards a new novel, which is Our Mutual Friend by a well-known creative writer who is, or his name is called Charles Dickens. So for the part of Charles Dickens, we know that he is the most well-known writer who started the inventive novel writing style, and he started it in the mid of 18th century. You know, like the 18th century is the pioneering area or era that everything is started with literature. So we cannot finish novel or take a novel course without finding out any story that belonged to or any novel belonged to Charles Dickens. So in the beginning here, you can see the look or the cover page of Our Mutual Friend, or the new cover that involved or made and designed by BBC. You can also watch the movie of the story, Our Mutual Friend. You know, any writing or any kind of work, for sure, it has kind of work for filming or a series or whatever. You can follow or trace whether a series or a movie, in case you need to wrap up what's going on with that novel, or what exactly if you want to do or to conclude the summary of this novel, you will have an idea and a quick response about the novel. So let's move to the next slide. So I put here an introduction, and this introduction is kind of little information about Our Mutual Friend. And we said, like, Charles Dickens in the 18th century, by writing Our Mutual Friend, seeks moral redemption and social renewal. So his main theme, or I mean the target or the purpose of writing Our Mutual Friends is about the redemption, how you redeem from something, and how you renew yourself. And renew here, we will know later why he mentioned, or why Dickens preferred to talk about renewal or social renewal. Our Mutual Friend also was the 14th and last completed novel of Charles Dickens. It means that's the last work of his series. You know, he wrote many novels, and in total they are 14. Like, he wrote Oliver Twist and David Copperfield and Bleak House. If you check them out, if you have time, you can read them somehow to get the style, or to recognize how his work is really becomes so invented and creative year by year, one by one. You know, like in this kind of story or in this kind of novel, the climax is quite complicated, and it needs a lot of challenge to recognize it. If you didn't read it, you have to trace the actions carefully, how you can find out how he divided the novel into parts. Like, part 1 includes few chapters, part 2 few chapters, as we knew that this novel has a lot of pages, and therefore you need to be quite knowledgeable about the strategy of reading it. You can read it now, and you can just pick out some chapters that you find interesting to you. If you don't have time for study, just try your best to take a look of the first 5 chapters. Why? That's how you can trace the characters, look at what's going on with the main characters and the flat characters, the minor and major characters, who is the antagonist and who is the protagonist, and that's how we can find the story. If we didn't find antagonists, we will find a lot of elements that affected them. So here, at that time, our mutual friend was being written. London was being demolished, excavated, and dug up as the Victoria Embankment and the first underground railway were being constructed. So this is an industrial revolution. At the time that being written, England was an industrial revolution. They made or they did a lot of things machines, printed machines, new streets, railway stations. So all of this and all this mess he found in front of him when he wrote our mutual friend. Another issue for writing it, we say redemption and social renewal, we have resurrection. So this in a novel that has been taken or as an exemplary tale of moral regeneration. So regeneration or beginning with John, and here John starting. John Harmon's the protagonist or the main or major important character. He started by what we call showing himself as a person who rise from the dead in the river. So the story, it's about someone, his name John Harmon, has got a will from his father or the dead father or the late dead father about marrying a girl. At that time she was 4 years old, and he followed or he realized what his father said to him later on after he back to England. So in that part, when he back to England and some people in the ship took him and kick him out or throw him in the river, they thought he was died, but fortunately he's still alive, and that's what we call baptismal resurrection. So baptismal resurrection, which slips out of one mystery that is never solved. So the resurrection, it means you are recreating yourself. You are recreating yourself. You are back again to the life, maybe with the same character or with another character, but you're still alive. You are the same person and you're still alive. So here he changed to be in another John Harmon identity. His name John Rocksmith, but we not talk about him at the moment. We will follow and trace the summary. So which becomes too transparent. However, much author at pains to conceal the secret. So the secret for keeping him between two identity, it's the way how he make the plot. The plot, it takes longer chapters until people recognize that John Harmon is the same of John Rocksmith. So both of them they are the same person, but he or John was felt that he had to change his identity after people thought he was dead in the river. So that sounds somewhat like that Christian parable of the seed which must be or must first die. If you have a seed, the seed almost like is a thing and there is no life in the seed. You have a seed, you want to plant a tree of olive, or you want to plant a tree of palm or whatever trees, you can find that there is no life in the seed, but suddenly when you put it in the ground, you are resurrected it and you give life to that seed. And then we have here, I want just to share with you kind of name or the characters that involve in whole conversation or in whole novel. We have a lot of conversation here and there. It's a big novel size, and that's why we cannot really define each one what he did. But I can say John Harmon is the protagonist, and in the will he wanted to marry Bella Wilfer. So his father or Harmon's father asked John to marry Bella if he back to England, and that's why like it's quite hard for him to just accept marrying her because she was quite younger. But when he found his father will, he back to England and start searching for Bella. Before he reached England, he got lost in the river, and that's why we said when they killed him, they thought that he already dead, but fortunately he's still alive. And we have here Silas Wigg, Mr. Buffin, Gaffer Hickson, Lazy Hickson. We have the Venereeds. We have Mr. Twimlow. We have Eugene Wary Pern. We have Mortimer Lightwood. We have Mr. Venus. We have Bradley Hillstone, and we have Johnny Wren, Mr. Fledge Pye, Sophronia Lumley, and we have Alfred Lumley, and last Mr. Rhea. So all of them already include a lot of issues related to find out that kind of novel. I think you will find it very interesting. Why? Because with its way of story, you will be totally connected to the whole story. You will not feel bored, as also you will try to read the scenes and try to check out some quotations, because you need to know the truth fully. Themes: we have marriage between what we call John Harmon and Bella Wilfer. It's a whole story about how you are a very considerable person and considerate. You face so many troubles, but at the end you did, or you make your word and your decision and your dream comes true when you marry Bella, even with another identity, but you're still the same person. Jealousy, how those pirates, or those who are the sailors in the ship, how they kick him out when they knew he had kind of wealth, and they feel jealousy, manipulation, a lot of manipulation in Dickens' work. You will find yourself lost when you go through the story. Society and class, like in the 18th century, after the Industrial Revolution, people divided into three classes: the wealthy people, or the rich people, and middle class and lower class. That's very common. Religion, a lot of, or the main issue in the whole novel, it's the idea of resurrection and rebirth and reborn, and that's why it's belong to Christian ideology and Christian thinking. Education, you can find how educated people can deal with others and how they can think. And finally, corruption that wealth can bring. The corruption is also existed deeply into many chapters, because people are looking for power and looking for getting money from either side. Even they can kill or they can steal. Nothing stop them, because they are looking for that level of power. We have here our mutual friend summary. The summary, it's really good here. because we mention the most important actions within a few slides. I can say the first slide here. The story of this novel are talking about an old man who had a son named John Harmon. The son had been abroad for 14 years. So the story, when you read that from the first chapter, that there is an old man, he had a son, and this son, or his son, is already away from him for 14 years, and he looked for connecting him to the motherland, or to his homeland. By who? Or how? The mechanism for using or bringing him back, or the strategy that he followed, he said there is nothing can bring him back except money and maybe marrying a girl. And that's why one day an old man died, then most of the property goes to John, but he can only get the money on one condition: he must marry a certain girl named Bella. That's why his father told him, like, or people know that his property and his wealth will be with John. But before John will be receiving all this kind of wealth, he has to marry Bella Wilfer. That's the condition, and the term of condition to receive the property safely. The old man saw this girl once when she was only 4 years old. So his father, or John's father, or Harmon's father, saw the girl once when she was 4 years old. And later, John decided to back to England by a ship. On the ship, he met a sailor named George Radfoot. So in that ship, George Radfoot was listening to John, and John informed him about the plan. He changed clothes with George to impersonate. The aim of this impersonation is to make an approach to know more about Bella. So he informed others about the will of his father, and the others, or the sailor, George Radford, was listening. When he was arriving in London, George took John to a house of a man called Rotherhood to buy a sailor uniform. So they need to take a ship and move by a uniform. What happened here? George wanted to kill John. So, like we here say, George Radford took him to Rogue Rotherhood. Why? It's not about buying or getting a uniform, but it's about here. It's about killing him. He want to kill John just to get the money before John reaching England. So you can see the story here. On the other hand, Rogue also wanted to kill John and blamed that killing on George. So because the story is already between George and Rogue, they thought in the same vein about killing John. That's the benefit for either of them. And but Rogue here looks like he's so smart to put the blame on the George, the person who brought him from from city to him. So by doing that, Rogue would get a reward because George wore John's clothes. So what happened here? George at that moment wore John's clothes, and Rogue didn't know that John already gave his clothes to George, and that's why George committed a mistake by killing quickly George. It means the friend that he brought the bait to him. George was dead while John was drowning in the river. So in that kind of ship, what happened? George is already dead, and John already thrown in the river. Fortunately, he could survive. So that's the resurrection. he could survive after there is no feeling or there is no logical sense that he will be survived. He could, and he used Julius or Julius Hanford as his name and stayed a hotel. So the first thing for him, he used the name of Julius Hanford. So John become Julius Hanford for his name. A man named Jesse Hexam and his daughter Lizzie, it found the body of George because George wear clothes or John's clothes, so they assumed it as John Harmon's dead body. So they first thought when they saw clothes of John Harmon, they said, okay, he's dead. Then Charlie, Jesse's son, sent a message to John Harmon's death to Mr. Mortimer Lightwood and Eugene Warburton, who were John lawyers. So John here, John has what? John lawyers. They are trying to contact him in case of the property. Because John Harmon already did, all his father's money went to the old servant, Noddy Puffin. So there is a servant in the house of old father, father of John, his name Noddy Puffin. That's legally moved from his or father of John Harmon father's lawyers, Eugene Warburton and Morton Lightwood. And then what happened? When Noddy and Mr. Puffin moved to a bigger house, they also took Bella. They did it because they had sympathy on Bella's life. When Mr. Puffin needed a secretary to handle his business, a man named John Rocksmith came and accepted to be his secretary. So that's the story. We said John Rocksmith later on will be John Harmon, but he here came as a secretary. John Rocksmith actually John Harmon. That's the point. John Rocksmith actually John Harmon. And he came to the house in order to investigate and know better about Bella. Mr. and Mrs. Buffin didn't know that John Rocksmith was the real of John Harmon. So that's a secret, and that's how Charles Dickens made the plot. It's very complicated here to understand how he got the idea to make John Harmon to be in another identity which called John Rocksmith, and he came to the same house of his father to find out that his servant Noddy and Mrs. Puffin started to be kind of owner of or landlord of his father's house. He came to the house in order to investigate, and after he investigated, Mr. and Mrs. Buffin didn't know him. Bella had changed from a poor girl into a beautiful girl who joined the very best society. So she was in lower society level because she is a poor girl, and now she moved to the house suddenly, and she became in the the higher class, the first class with Mr. and Mrs. Puffin, while John started to make an approach to Bella. So John started to convince Bella. One day John expressed his love to Bella and asked her to marry him, but she rejected him because of his lower social status. So she didn't know him exactly, and that's why she rejected him, because she considered he's a secretary, he's working like a servant, and she is in a higher class. And here honestly, Bella already in love with him. At the moment, when looking at John's face, she realized that he was the real John Harmon. So the Buffins knew that John Rocksmith is John Harmon because of the facial expression. And building on it, and accordingly, one day, Mr. Buffin pretended to chase away John Rocksmith because he had been so cheeky to ask Bella for marrying him. He kept asking her repeatedly about marrying him. Finally, Bella realized that money had changed Mr. Buffin. money changed Mr. Buffin, and it looks like he is a very greedy man or something like this. She said to Mr. Buffin, when I came here, I loved and respected you, but your money has changed you. So already Mr. Buffin got corrupted by the huge amount of money or the great amount of money that he got from the father of John. I used to love money, but now I hate it, and I hate you too. So that way for that plot here, we can see the climax. The climax is when she started against the will of Mr. Buffin, because he didn't want her to marry John. At the same time, he thought that with money he can change others' mind. Bella left the house with John Rocksmith. Bella had been happily married to John Rocksmith for more than a year, and then one day, what happened here? They are walking. Through their walking, suddenly they met Mr. Lightwood, the lawyer. So they met the lawyer again, and Mr. Lightwood here recognized John as Julius or Julius, what we call Handford. Recognized John as what we call, that's the name when he got into the hotel. So Julius Handford, who has assumed as the murderer of John Harmon. Then he took John to the police station. John explained his real identity as John Harmon to Mr. Lightwood, and then he took Bella to the Buffin's house. So the story is starting to be happily here. It ended happily. Why? Because already Bella realized that she married the one that she could be waiting for longer time, and he already with her marrying her in another identity. So he realized his secret to Bella and revealed it to Bella that John Rocksmith and Julius Handford are the same man. It is John Harmon. Even he used two identities here, Julius Handford and John Rocksmith, instead of protecting himself from those who are jealous of him and those who wanted to kill him anyhow. They don't have any feeling about what he's looking for, and that's why he used another way for hiding and pretending. But Bella here surprised, and she didn't change her feeling to John. She just understood that John doing that in case of reaching her and finding her out with him. So the point that we are looking for is how Bella is keeping him with her. She didn't skip away or find another way to do her activity. And then at the end, John Harmon is triumphant. Why? When we recognize the story, we can understand at the end of whole novel what is written to be for John Harmon is already with him. Why? As we said again, he married Bella, he got the property, the evil people already gone, and the retreats into Berjou's success. So he back to be in the middle class, and he think that there is no more game or playing with aesthetic effect felt more in meaning than in powerful experience of the real. So that's how John Harmon at the end had a nice ending that he deserved for the long of suffering. He lived a long journey of suffering. He suffered a lot, and that's why he deserved at the end something as a reward for what he waited for. And at the end, we can say that's a quick summary for the story, and you can see the identity change, how he used different ways until he reached his target and his purpose. He really put himself in danger and risk from time to time, but what is really stable and constant, that his will is or dream comes out true. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next week for more discussion about on the Zoom about the whole novel. We will start picking some chapters to analyze and discuss. And I wish you a nice weekend. Thank you very much.